to Buddha to help me deliver this message. Thank you. Greetings, starseeds, lightworkers, and wayshowers. Een Laq, I am another you. You are another me. We are one God-sciousness. Today I'm here to give you a special message, a different one. And that's why I'm sitting out here in my backyard. You're looking at my Goya leaves. And today is the 5-year anniversary of my spiritual awakening, and it was the bell that wrung me awake from my dark night of the soul. And actually, you know what? I want to change that term. Souls don't actually have dark nights. It's the dark night of the ego. Your soul is a holy hologram, a divine spark, a sacred fractal of God-sciousness. Your soul can't be sad or angry or anything, but your ego can. Oh my goodness. 5 years ago today, August 13th, 2017, I was sitting in Vipassana meditation course, my second one. My first one was in 2001 in March in Vancouver, and my second one was in Tokyo, Japan. In between, a lot of stuff happened. Let's see, 2 weeks after my first one, I met my wife and moved to Japan 2 years later. Got married, had the kids, got my master's degree, was teaching at university, and in 2011, you might remember the Great East Earthquake and tsunami and nuclear and political meltdown. And I decided to move back to Canada with my 2 children and my wife. You can hear them inside playing. And in 2012, we moved to Canada, Toronto. And you know what they don't need in Canada? English teachers. So for me, working there was not great. And another interesting thing that happened is 1 week after I arrived, my parents said they were getting a divorce. And I was like, now? What? And they said, oh, you can stay in the house for now. We're going to sell it later, though. So, yeah. And then they both left on their own paths to Florida, by the way, which is where they are now, married to Americans. They're actually about 50 kilometers apart. But that's another story. And no, you know what? It's actually not. It is this story. So, English teaching in Toronto. 2 years in a row, I got laid off in November and had no work, and it was not good. And both of those years, it was like minus 20 degrees. So we just said, you know what? We're going back to Japan. And I knew people in Tokyo, and I called them, actually emailed, and Facebook friends, and they said, well, you already missed the full-time hiring market, but there's lots of part-time jobs that come up. So in February of 2014, I flew to Tokyo and I did 4 job interviews, and I got 3 of them, and then I got 1 more a week later when I went back to Canada on a Skype interview, and we moved to Tokyo in April of 2014. And quickly turned into 5 jobs. I was teaching at 5 different universities, taking the rush hour trains in Tokyo. And you know what they have in Tokyo? 24-hour alcohol sales. So, everywhere. And I would finish work and get some alcohol and get on the train and take the 1.5-hour train home, be slightly drunk by the time I got off the train, get some more alcohol, go home, drink some more. So, aside from all of the normal life frustration that a normal person has. I had the 2 years in Toronto of my parents getting divorced, which was frustrating, and I went from working in Japan at a decent salary and everything to making less than $20,000 a year, supporting a family of 4 for those 2 years, and I jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire of Tokyo, and I was really frustrated. And then I remembered Vipassana, and I checked online, and there was a center there in Tokyo. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I had done it, as I said, and it had a big effect on me back in 2001. And, things like breathing, posture, presence of mind, calmness. And so I went into it, and the way that Vipassana works is they wake you up at 4 a.m. with a gong. Someone walks around between all of the barracks or the buildings you're staying in or whatever the situation is. And you have to be sitting in the main hall at 4:30. And you sit from 4:30 to 5:30. And then there's 1 hour for breakfast. And then you can sit in your room from 6:30 to 7:30 or go back to the main hall from 6:30 to 7:30. And that's basically the structure all day long. It's meditate, eat, take a break, meditate. But the crucial thing of Vipassana is there's no talking whatsoever. And in fact, there's no eye contact. And I didn't wear my glasses, and I had a cap. And, I was just zoning in the first time. The second time in Tokyo, there's one other thing. They have there's a code of conduct and a vow of silence. It's called noble silence, that you agree not to talk to anyone, not to bother, not to bump shoulders, not to, no eye contact for the whole 10 days. And here I was on day 1 being woken up at 3:50 by an alarm of the guy in the room next to me. And he turned it off after like 3 beeps. Beep, 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 beep. I was like, what the And then at 3:52, another guy, we were in a room of 14, and it was one big room, everyone had little walls, but no ceiling, and you could hear everything, farts, burps, sneezes. Snoring was very loud and clear. So I was like, fine, and I did my sit, 4:30, 5:30, you do your things, and then I went back to my room. There's a break, I believe it's 9:30 to 10:30, I don't remember the schedule, and I lay down, and at around 10:15, I hear beep, 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 and I'm like, So at noon, you're actually allowed to speak to the manager or director. If you write your name on a list and you have a 5-minute slot, and you're not supposed to make eye contact, and you go and you sit, and they're sitting this way, and you say your thing. So I said, there's alarms. A couple guys have alarms, and I did this in Vancouver, and there's strictly no alarms. There's the code of conduct and the noble silence, and he said, well, I guess they're tired. And I was like, So a couple of other times during the day, alarms went off. Next morning, 3:50, alarms went off, and I was so angry. Oh my God. And Vipassana, you sit and they play an audio recording of the modern, not founder, but the modern main teacher, Goenkaji, S.N. Goenka. And he's this little man. I actually didn't meet him, but I went to a talk that he did in Vancouver shortly after I did it the first time with my wife, and she's done it twice too. Anyway, on the second day I was listening, and he said, if there's thoughts coming up in your mind, I'm doing a bad Goenkaji impersonation, then just breathe quickly through your nose and let it go. Let the thoughts go. So, I was trying that and it wasn't working. And then later in the afternoon, I chose to stay in my room. And I said, okay, I'm going to sit for this 1 hour and I am going to breathe through my nose. And I started doing this. And I was thinking in, out, in, out. And I was doing that for about 10 minutes, and then my observer came through, and I realized that my in, out was disconnected from my body going, they had drifted. So my observer said, excellent. And I kept doing it. And maybe, I'm just guessing 7 minutes later, I finally stopped going in, out, in, out. But my observer told my body to keep going. And perhaps after 20 minutes, I started getting this pain creeping up both of my arms. It really hurt, but I just kept going. And maybe 23 minutes in, they'd come up to my shoulders, and I just kept going. And approximately 25 minutes, I don't know, I started to feel this, everything was converging in my heart, and I felt this wave coming up, and I was like, finally, and I just kept going. And then I started to cry so deeply, and something split open inside of me, and all of a sudden I experienced every hatred, every anger, every pain, every guilt and shame and suffering. I saw and experienced everything from my life. It was like a past life review of all of the negativity, and it was so horrific that I decided to kill myself. There was no way I could possibly live with having had all of that done to me and that I had done to everyone. And by the way, that whole experience from the crack and the split took approximately 1 second in Earth time. And at the instant that I said I would kill myself, and I was deadly serious, I was going to do it, and I knew how I was going to do it. The very instant that I had that thought, I heard, "Forgive," shouted into every cell of my body, and I still do not know where that voice came from. And I was so blown away. I fell back on my cot, completely stunned, and I don't know where the voice came from, but I knew it was the answer to every single moment of suffering that had happened in my life. And I lay there, and my mother's face just appeared. And these 4 things came into my mind. I said, "Thank you so much for all the good you've brought into my life, and I am so sorry for all the bad I've caused you, and I completely forgive you for every bad thing you caused me, and I love you." And then my father's face appeared before mine. I said the same thing. "Thank you so much for all the good. Sorry for all the bad I caused you. I completely forgive you for all the bad you caused me, and I love you." And I did not plan to say those things. They were not a logical conclusion of what should be said. And I had never heard of Ho'oponopono, which is almost the exact same thing in a different order, but it's just from you to that person. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I forget the other two. The third one is I love you. So, I also pictured my brothers. And I just lay there for the next 20 minutes. At the most peaceful I've ever felt in my life. And there was 2 more strong determination sits in the main hall, and 1 more in my room, and dinner, and then the nightly talk from Goenkaji. The next morning, the alarms went again, and I was like, oh, it still bothered me. I wasn't permanently in samadhi, or I didn't reach an ascended state, or enlightenment. No, I didn't stay there. What happened after was ascension and enlightenment, yes. So I went through the routine, and I was so curious that in the same time slot in the afternoon, I went back to my room, and I was like, all right, here we go again. And, excuse me, I did it. And if you do this, have some tissues, because after about 5 or 10 minutes, you start snotting. And I do recommend that you do this, especially if you feel that you are in a dark night of the ego, and even if you do not feel like you are in there, it will heal you, I promise you. The message you need will come. So I did that, and about 20 minutes, 17, I got the pain coming up, and it came at 25, and nothing happened, and I was so exhausted, I just lay down on the bed. Next morning, beep, 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 I was like, oh. So I did the routine, sit and eat, and same time slot, I was like, okay, here we go again, all right, here we go. In, out, and I cracked through again. I broke through, and I started crying. There was no voice this time because I had received the message. And then I knew, all right, I'm done here. I actually went to the manager one more time, and I said, you know, these alarms are not part of noble silence. This is breaking the vows. And he said, well, I can't tell them no. And I said goodbye, and I left the Vipassana on day 5. And I went home, and I wish I could say my whole life changed in an instant, but I began drinking again, slowly, not as much. And, I explained the situation to my wife and my children. I told them what happened, and I had a Skype with my mom and told her, and she was like, oh my God, I love you, I forgive you. And same with my dad, actually, and one of my brothers, and the other one didn't want to speak to me. That's fine. And at that time, I was not actually following the Mayan calendar. And I always checked it on special days, like if I was traveling to Canada or traveling somewhere, a friend of mine, I would just check my favorite website, Mayan Magics. And so I was like, oh yeah, okay, August 13th, 2017, let's check that. And it was called, in my terminology now, Manifesting Wise One. It's 10, glyph, tone 10 of the glyph K'ib. And the key word is forgiveness. And I'm not joking, so you could call that day Manifesting Forgiveness. And that was when I realized this is so real. And about a year later, I was reading everything I could on the Mayan calendar, and I was meditating, and I had another 1 second instantaneous download that I saw myself and felt myself. A little close here. I felt my right hand being gripped and my left hand was open, and I was looking up to my divine future. My thoughts were going to my divine past. Right hand, divine masculine. Left hand, divine feminine. And it has taken me a couple years, about 3, to unpack that download of 1 second. I don't know who gave me that, but I do believe it was an intergalactic Maya, or possibly the Hunab-Ku, which apparently is the 9th dimension, or an aspect of the collective consciousness, or the Tzolk'een, which actually might be the 9th dimension. The Hunab-Ku might be the 10th or the 13th. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I am here on Earth right now. And I am telling you, my love, the Divine Mayan Tzolk'een, as embodied by Mayan embodiment astrology, is a legitimate path to ascension, because that forgiveness experience is woven into it among many other highly spiritual resources, books. So much I have read. Just one more little story. About 3 months after that first Vipassana, I went on a business trip to Osaka. And every time I go to another city, I go into their used bookstores, and they always have an English section. And I said to the guy, "Sumimasen, eigo no hon wa doko desu ka?" Excuse me, where are the English books? And he took me over, and he said there. And it's always a small section. There's 1,000,000 books in the store, and there's maybe 500 in the English shelf. And I was walking towards it, and one of them, I was like, buying that book, getting that one, buying that book. And I didn't look at anything else. I just picked that one. Didn't even look at the title. Pull it out, and I'm like, Many Lives, Many Masters. Whatever. Dr. Brian Weiss. Never heard of him? Okay, fine, that's it. $1.99. Get back to my hotel. And I started reading this. He's a psychiatrist, psychologist. I forget, psychiatrist, I believe. My degree is in psychology. And he started doing a past life regression hypnosis on a client after almost a year and nothing else working, medication, anything. She was having all of these phobias and fears, and nothing worked. And he hypnotized her. She went into a spontaneous past life regression. That wasn't even his intention. So, being meticulous, he's actually the obsidian mirror, obsidian knife, and they are very meticulous people. I forget his tone right now. Let me put it up. Oh, there it is. He kept impeccable records, and they were able to prove that some of her past lives had existed. It blew his mind, changed his life completely. Just Google him. So that came to me. So past life regression and the eternal soul is woven into Mayan embodiment astrology. A Course in Miracles, the Law of One, the Way. So many spiritual things I've read since my awakening to help me make sense of what happened to me. The Sophia Code, hugely influential. And it's all in here, my love. So that was my awakening from the dark night of the ego. And isn't it interesting that I was awoken by an alarm clock? And oh, I wanted to. And now I'm like, thank you so much. Oh, so here we are. Today, 5 years later, tone 3 of the glyph called breath. Tone 3 is called activating. Breath is communication of spirit, breath of life. So I am activating the breath of life and communication of spirit today for you, my love. I do love you with all of my heart, because now I love me with all of mine, and I love my mother and my father and my brothers, my sister, and I love every single being in the omniverse with all of my heart. Thank you. Namaste.